You're not supposed to be here. That's the first thing. Your shift ended at 11. You covered for Janet because Janet's kid had a fever and you didn't have anywhere to be. That's the only reason you're sitting at console 7 at 2:14 in the morning when the call comes in. The number is unlisted. That's not unusual. What's unusual is the voice. It's yours. Not similar. Not a woman with the same ragged edge at the end of a long sentence. Yours. The exact cadence of your own voice coming through the headset, and your hand stops moving over the keyboard before your brain can explain why. The voice says, "Don't transfer this call. Don't flag it. Don't tell anyone yet. Just listen." You listen. The voice tells you that in 11 minutes, a man named Roland Voss is going to walk into the 24-hour pharmacy on Cleary Street with a gun. 2 people will die if the first unit to respond parks in front of the building, because Roland will see the lights through the plate glass window and panic before negotiations can begin. The second unit needs to come around back through the service alley and wait. If you do this exactly right, nobody dies tonight.
Who is this?
You say, "Who is this?" The voice says, "You know who this is." There's a pause. The kind of pause that sounds like someone deciding how much truth fits through a phone line. She says, "I'm calling from 73 days from now. I found a way to send a call back, but I only get one. I used it for this." You look at the clock. 2:14. 11 minutes is 2:25. Your screen is quiet. No calls on Cleary Street. No units in the area. A still Tuesday night in the middle of a city that mostly sleeps by 1. The rational part of your brain generates explanations in order. A prank. A test from supervisors. Someone who sounds like you. A recording. A very specific kind of breakdown from too much overnight coffee and not enough real sleep. But the voice keeps talking, and it says things only you would know. It says, "You have a scar on the inside of your left wrist from when you fell off your bike on the first day of 3rd grade and grabbed the chain link fence on the way down. You never told anyone that story. You always said it was a kitchen accident." You look at your wrist. It says, "Your locker combination is 14337, and you wrote it on a Post-it stuck inside your console drawer." You slide the drawer open. The Post-it is there. You look at the clock. 2:16. She gives you the details fast. Roland Voss is 34 years old. He lost his daughter to a prescription error at a hospital 3 weeks ago. He's been driving past that pharmacy every night since. He blames the pharmacist. He's not a criminal. He's a father who ran out of road, and this is the last turn he knows how to make. She knows because in the version where you don't get this call, she heard his file read aloud at the inquest. She memorized his name and his daughter's name, and the name of the drug that was in the wrong bottle, and she's been carrying all of it for 73 days because nobody told her she wasn't supposed to. You think about what gets written in reports. You think about what gets read at inquests. You think about 2 people dying because you were too careful to act on something you couldn't explain. You dispatch 2 units. Specific instructions. First unit, north approach, 2 blocks back, no lights. Second unit, service alley, rear entrance, wait. You don't explain why. Dispatch doesn't always explain why. At 2:24, the first unit radios in. Male subject entering the pharmacy on Cleary Street. Appears agitated, possibly armed. At 2:25, the second unit confirms position in the alley. At 2:27, Someone radios, "Subject is talking. At the counter, talking to the pharmacist. Not shooting, just talking." At 2:31, the negotiator arrives. 14 minutes after that, Roland Voss walks out the front door with his hands up and his face destroyed. And the pharmacist is still alive, because tonight there is no inquest. Tonight, there is just a man sitting on a curb with a gun in a bag on the ground beside him, and an officer is saying his daughter's name, and Roland Voss is crying the way people cry when someone finally says the right word. You sit at console 7 for a long time after that. You don't tell anyone about the call. That's the first mistake. 3 days later, the number calls again. You pick up before the second ring. This time, the voice is different. Still yours, but tired in a way that goes past one bad night. Tired in a way that sounds like something got used up that doesn't grow back. She tells you about a fire, apartment building on Mercer, 6 floors, Unit 4C, electrical fault behind the wall panel, starting at 11:50 Friday. By the time anyone calls it in, the east stairwells will be gone. There's a woman on the 6th floor, 81 years old, front door deadbolted from the inside, won't hear the alarm in time. Her name is Iris Beaumont. She will not make it to... She gives you the unit number, the deadbolt style, the fire escape position, and the name of the firefighter who needs to know all of this before going in. You write it down. Then you ask the question you've been sitting on for 3 days. You say, "What happened? What happened 73 days from now that let you send these calls back?" There's as she says, "There's a facility. I don't fully understand what they built or how long they've been running it. I found the interface by accident, and I had one use, and I used it for Roland Voss. And now I'm using this one for Iris Beaumont because there are more of them. More nights that go wrong in ways they don't have to." You say, "How many?" She says, "I made a list." You say, "How long is the list?" She says, "Long." You ask where the facility is. She says, "I can't tell you that yet. If you go before you're supposed to find it, you might not find it the same way I did. And then I'm not standing here making this call. And Roland Voss dies on a Tuesday, and Iris Beaumont burns in 4C, and everything I've already saved gets erased." You say, "That's not an answer." She says, "I know. Get a pen." She gives you the rest of the details. Then the call ends. The fire on Mercer starts at 11:48, 2 minutes early. You've already flagged it and given the right information to the right people, and a firefighter named Estes goes up the east stairwell before it's gone, breaks a deadbolt, and carries Iris Beaumont down 6 flights in under 4 minutes. She is coughing in the parking lot when the 6th floor ceiling gives out. You watch the news from your couch the next morning. A close call, they say. They show Iris Beaumont, wrapped in a silver emergency blanket, with the face of a woman who has survived other things, and expected to survive this one too. You think about your other self, standing somewhere with a list. You think about how long a list can get. The calls keep coming. A drowning in Hallett Park, Shallow End. A child who went under without a sound while the parents looked at their phones. A carbon monoxide leak in a restaurant kitchen. 6 staff members. One doesn't wake up without the call, but with it, they all do. A head-on collision prevented by routing an ambulance 4 minutes faster around a jammed bridge. You save them all. You don't sleep well. You develop a system, a notebook in the drawer under the post-it. You flag the right units, give the right instructions, never explain more than necessary.
You've become very good at making protocols sound like the reason for things that have no clean reason. But the version of you calling from 73 days ahead is changing. Not her voice exactly. Something behind it. Early on, she gave information and got off the line quickly. Now she stays longer. She asks how Roland is doing. She wants to know where Iris Beaumont went after the hospital. You say, "You were there for all of this. You know how it turned out." She says, "I know how it turned out before you started getting the calls. You're changing things. Each thing you change means the version I lived through is a version you aren't living through. We're splitting." You say, "What does that mean?" She says, "It means I'm becoming a version of you that didn't have someone calling with a list. I made all the decisions alone, found the facility alone, carried this alone. And the version of you at Console 7 has me telling her everything in advance. And pretty soon, that version of you is going to be somewhere I can't predict." You say, "Is that bad?" She says, "I don't know yet." The 41st call is different. She doesn't start with information. She starts with a name. She says, "I need to tell you about Dr. Elaine Carver. She runs the facility. I've been going back and forth about whether to tell you this for weeks, but you need to know before you find it." She says, "The interface doesn't just send calls back. It logs them. Every call, every name, every incident. The facility has a record. Carver has been watching them go through, tracking outcomes, the lives saved, the events changed, the way the city looks different after 41 interventions. She's been documenting all of it because she wants to publish. She wants to prove the technology works. And the proof is 41 nights that went differently than they were going to go. And to prove those nights went differently, she has to tell someone what they were supposed to look like." You understand before she finishes. Roland Voss, Iris Beaumont, the child in Hallett Park. Their almost deaths become data. Their worst nights. The nights they don't even know they almost had. Written into a paper and put in front of people who will read them like statistics. She says, "I want you to find the facility before Carver publishes. Go there and understand what it is before someone else decides what it means. I can't tell you where it is, but I can tell you you've walked past it more than once, and the reason you haven't gone in is that it doesn't look like what it is from the outside." She gives you a single detail, a color, a door. Then she says, "This is the last call I'm sending back. Whatever happens next is yours." You say, "Wait." She says, "You'll be fine." You say, "You don't know that." She says, "No, but I know you." The line goes quiet. You find the door 2 weeks later. It is the color she told you, on a street you've driven 500 times. Set into the side of a building that looks like records storage, with a keypad instead of a handle, and one button worn smoother than the rest from years of use. You press it. You wait. A woman opens the door. She's in her 50s. She looks at you the way someone looks at something they've been expecting for a long time. She says, "I'm Elaine Carver. I've been watching your work." You say, "I know." The facility is smaller than you expected. 3 rooms and a corridor. In the center room, one console that doesn't look like much, a chair, a screen, a headset almost identical to the one at Console 7. She explains it the way people explain things they love. Fast, imprecise, skipping the parts that are hard to justify. A narrow channel, voice only, maximum range roughly 90 days.
She found it by accident during research into signal interference. She's been running it for 2 years. You say, "Who else has used it?" She says, "Just me, and then you." After I watched what you did with the first call, I stepped back. I wanted to see what you'd do with access. You say, "You gave me access." She says, "I gave your future self access. Your future self made different choices than I would have. I wanted to document those choices." You say, "Without asking." She doesn't answer. You think about the notebook in your drawer. 41 names, 41 nights, 41 people walking around this city who don't know they're in a paper. You say, "I'm not asking you to throw it away. I'm asking you to let them decide. Every name in that file, you contact them, you explain what happened, you ask permission. If any of them say no, that name doesn't go in." She says, "That could take months." You say, "I know." She says, "Some of them might not believe you." You say, "I know." She says, "1 or 2 might be angry." You say, "I know." That's what consent looks like. It's slow, and some people say no, and you don't get to skip it because the outcome was good. Carver stands in the middle of her facility, and she looks like someone who has not had this conversation before and needed to have it a long time ago. She says, "All right." You walk to the console. You sit in the chair. You put on the headset. You think about the version of yourself who stood in this room 73 days ago with a list and 1 use left and spent it on Roland Voss. You think about what it means to save someone's life without them ever knowing it was in danger. You think about whether that makes the saving less real or more real, or just a different kind of real that doesn't have a name yet. You think about Janet's kid with the fever. The only reason you had nowhere to be. The only reason you were at Console 7 at 2:14 in the morning when a phone rang and your own voice came through. The only reason any of this happened is that you covered a shift. You pick up the phone. You think about the next name on the list. You